Hey, everybody, and welcome to Learning from Smart People. I am your host, Rob Oliver, and thank you for being with me today. My guest today is Sandra Lane, and she's from right here in Pittsburgh, so that makes her a wonderful person to start off with. She is a friend of mine, and I think you're going to learn some good stuff today because she's a smart person. She is the owner of a company called Organization Lane, where she works with clients and corporations to elevate their productivity and focus on what matters most. She does this through speaking, consulting, and writing. Sandra, welcome to the show.
I'm happy to be here, Rob. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So let's kind of start with your backstory. Where where did you come from? How did you get to doing what you're doing today?
Okay, so I'll give you a very quick rundown. I'm actually a Jersey girl by birth and moved here when I married my husband almost 30 years ago and raised my kids in the Pittsburgh area and love it here. And when my kids got to that stage where they didn't quite need me so much anymore, middle school age, I thought maybe it's time to do a little something with this degree in business that I got. And I certainly learned a lot volunteering for various organizations too that were around my kids and my church. So I took all of that experience and I had a good sit down with God and said, what's next? And the path was wide open for me, and faith drew me to organizing. It's something that I've always been good at, and I know that running a business is difficult, so I figured I could use my business degree and put the two together and see what happens. And 10 years later, I was still organizing before the pandemic and speaking on the side. And in the last 2 years, my business model shifted slightly thanks to the pandemic, which I know was difficult for so many people. But for me, it offered an opportunity. And I've heard this from a lot of people to reset and reflect. And that's exactly what I did. So now my business revolves around speaking exclusively. I've released that hands-on organizing part of the business model. And now I just work with folks through consulting, speaking, and writing about time management and organization and productivity.
Okay, so you're looking at things. First of all, I'll just comment on this. So, as a Jersey girl, how long did it take you when you moved to Pittsburgh to realize that when you pulled up to the gas pump, no one was coming out to pump gas for you, right?
That's one of the many changes. I had to be taught how to pump gas. Thankfully, my husband came from a state where they do it all the time. So that was weird, amongst other things. Finding and adjusting to the pizza is different, and the bagels, anything has to do with dough is different out here as opposed to in New Jersey. So yeah, there was a few things. The signage was different, the on ramps, the off ramps, but I love it, and I can't imagine not living anywhere else.
Yeah, what? And here in Western Pennsylvania, we don't have nearly as many traffic circles as what they used to have in New Jersey. Although, for the most part, they're taking those out because they've come to realize that traffic circles work wonderful in theory and on paper, but the practical reality of it is not quite so easy. So let's. I just want to make sure that people are understanding where you're coming from. When you're talking about organization, you're not talking about like the IKEA closet organizer thing where you're helping people to organize their home and their stuff. You're talking about businesses and helping them. Is when it comes to organizing with business, are you talking about like the structure of the business? Are you talking about the like what elements are you talking about when it comes to organizing a business?
Are you referring to what it was I was doing prior to the pandemic, that hands-on organizing piece, or where I'm at the moment?
Let's talk about where you are right now.
Okay, so when it comes to the organizing piece, it's really more about consulting on how employees can run their own personal space more efficiently so that they can be more productive. And when they're more productive, not only do they produce for the company, but they also improve the quality of their life outside of work because they're not stressed or anxious about what's happening at work or what they're missing or what they can't get done. And the work-life balance phrase is used so often. If we focused a little bit more on the productivity piece, that work-life balance just might kind of equalize itself. So files, processes, systems, flows that you may have in your office space, how your office is set up. Is it ergonomically comfortable for you? Are you really working in a healthy space? And are you procrastinating? Are you a perfectionist? How do you manage your inbox? Those elements are all part of a bigger puzzle on how we can be more productive.
Okay. So you have been kind enough that you gave me a list of some productivity tips that we can kind of talk about and go through. And so productivity tip number one, and these apply whether you're working from home or you're in the office, I think, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. So your first one is preparation for a productive day begins the night before. Talk to me about that. What does that mean?
Sure. Well, if there's anything I have learned from my own experience is those early morning hours from when your alarm goes off to the moment you sit down at your desk. There's a very small window there. We don't have a lot of time. It's anywhere from 2 to 3 hours for most people. And that time slips right through our fingers very quickly. So if we could do some preparation and planning the night before, could we take advantage of some of that time in the morning to do something that's more important to us? So, for example, laying out your clothes the night before rather than trying to spend time figuring out what you're going to wear to the office the day of. If you want to work out in the morning, check the forecast, lay out your sneakers and your whole outfit the night before. Lunches for kids and yourself, backpacks at the door so that they can just scoot right out and you're not scrambling around trying to find anything. Your to-do list for work, have it ready and waiting for you. Check your calendar for the next day. What meetings do you have? You want to basically prepare your mindset for what's happening tomorrow, but do as much as you can the night before. Even the coffee, Rob, set up the coffee. It's only a few minutes to prepare that. But if all you have to do is push the button on, then you've just saved yourself a couple of minutes. And it does add up.
Okay, so you're like the Ben Franklin with daylight savings time, in which you're doing morning savings time. Okay, by doing things the night before, you have them all prepared out. Okay, and it's funny that you say this because on a personal story, my grandparents, my grandfather was just about the most efficient person that I know of, and that whenever you went to their house, he like before you went to bed, the breakfast table was all set. The dish, like the silverware that and they were formal. They're using like actual silverware and china plates and all of that, and it was all set up the night before. And so in the morning you got up and it was just a matter of fill the bowl with cereal and eat your and it made everything move much more quickly. So apparently I didn't realize this, but my grandfather and he subscribed to your philosophy way back before you had even shared it with him. So that's amazing. Can you talk about it? Are there business tasks that you can start that you can set up at the end of the day that would be helpful for the start of the next day? Is that something as well?
Absolutely. I believe in a shutdown procedure for your office. And part of that shutdown procedure, turning off all the lights, sure. But make sure that your inbox is completely cleared. Answer that last email before you head out for the day. So again, you're leaving it at the office, and that way you can focus on what's happening at home. Check your calendar, check your to-do list for the next day, and write it out and prepare it. Have all the necessary projects and file folders for any meetings or client meetings that you might have. So it's all ready and waiting for you. All you need to do is bring your cup of coffee in and you're in the starting blocks and get your day going.
Got it. All right. So your second tip is to set boundaries. Let's talk to me about that, please.
Sure. So I think that we are challenged by interruptions and overstimulation in the office, but I think that they have exacerbated when we've moved to that remote lifestyle. So no matter what you're doing, if you're in a hybrid mode, exclusively working remotely, or you're back in the office, we have lots of distractions and interruptions that get in our way. And while it may be a part of doing business, it may be a part of being at home. If we set boundaries, it'll make us more productive. Because when we allow those interruptions and distractions to occur, that knock on the door, the ring, the ping of our phones to nudge us, we react. And when we react immediately, we stop what we're doing, what we promised ourselves we were going to respond. Or maybe not even respond. We might just be looking because we have that fear of missing out. We just want to see what happened. We'll deal with it later, but we just want to see what happened. But now what you've done, because you've stopped working, is you've set the wheels in motion to slow yourself down when it comes to your workflow. And then getting started back up again, kind of think of those crank cars. It's a little bit like that. We kind of have to get back going again. Okay, so where did I leave off? You need to get that flow back again. So setting boundaries means being proactive about some of those distractions. So, for example, coworkers, share your schedule with them in advance and let them know where open opportunities for a visit, rather than have them just impromptu stop by and start talking about your kid's soccer game over the weekend. Close the door, put a note on the door that says focused work in progress. And when it comes to your phone, just put it on do not disturb while you're doing that focused work. It's very, very important in order to really get deep focused work completed. And it doesn't have to be off all day. You don't have to set these boundaries all day. That would be unreasonable, but you can set them for limited amounts of time. So at least, if you give yourself 30 to 45 minutes of doing deep work without any interruptions, that increases your chances of getting a task done and getting into a flow.
Yeah. So there's a lot to unpack in that. Number one, I totally understand. I was listening to a guy who was talking about just that. He said, okay, imagine what you can accomplish in 1 hour of undistracted, focused work. And so take that 1 hour, set it aside and do that. Number two, I remember I had learned that the human brain is actually unable to multitask well. Mm-hmm. So when you have 100% of your brain, and if you are trying to focus on more than one task at a time, it doesn't get split 50-50. If you're lucky, it gets split 40-40. And so in that, the amount of production that you're able to come up with is lessened significantly. And then the last thing is, I don't know where I heard it, but there's an axiom that says something along the lines of the amount of work will expand to fill the time allotted to it, which means when you don't set boundaries, it expands the time that the work takes because you don't have a definitive start and end. What's your reaction to any of those concepts?
Yes, you are spot on every single one. And I know this is a very broad tip to share, but there are so many distractions. So just think about when it comes to setting boundaries to be proactive. Like, what can you do to satisfy, eliminate, or, kind of condense and set that boundary on any of those interruptions. So in terms of what you said first, the multitasking, I think that's what you mentioned first. Was it the multitasking?
We'll go with that one.
Yeah, so multitasking is absolutely an improper way to work. It's the reason why texting and driving is against the law. You're right. Where our brain is divided into two parts, and we really can't focus on either of those equally, certainly not give 100% attention. And that's exactly what some of these distractions and interruptions do. And that axiom that you were talking about is Parkinson's law, which I talk about frequently, particularly when it comes to procrastination, and when I talk about time blocking, which is another one of the tips that I'm going to share. Yeah, we absolutely expand the amount of work that we have when we don't have a deadline. And that's really what we want to do. We want to, create a boundary, create that deadline. So yeah, it's hard to do, but with some, regular, consistent habits, such as setting boundaries, it's possible.
Okay, so you actually have moved us right into the next tip, which you mentioned is block your schedule. So talk to me, and I'm assuming that you're talking about time blocking, and what exactly does that mean, and how does that show up?
Sure. So time blocking is when you designate a start and end time for an activity. And during that start and end time, you will focus on working on one specific task and only that task. And your goal is to complete that task during that block of time. And you can time block your entire day, even when you get home, or you can just time block your business day. But the important thing is that what you're doing here is you are creating those boundaries. You're setting up guardrails for your day so that you don't get distracted, because you only have a certain block of time to do this work. So you're going to hunker down and get this work done. You're basically working against the clock. So a couple of things to consider when you time block, because I time block every single day, and I find it to be very gratifying to know that at the end of the day, if I followed through with what I said I was going to do, I really have, in fact, completed everything I chose to, and I recommend it to many of my clients. Make sure when you write up your time block schedule that you have a time that you plan on ending your day, particularly if you're working from home, because our home office can so easily bleed into our work life. If we do not leave our office just because it's available 24/7 doesn't mean we should be here 24/7. So if you know that you have to do some carpooling at 3 or 4 o'clock, or you want to start getting dinner ready, whatever the case may be, make sure that you've written that in your time block schedule, that the day is going to end at 4.
Okay.
That way you know how much time you have to do everything else until 4, so that you can meet those home life commitments. Also, consider scheduling those reactive distractions that we're so accustomed to, right? So in other words, schedule time, 30 to 45 minutes, to process email. Instead of stopping what you're doing to check and see who emailed you and, I'll deal with it later, schedule time to check and process your email, to take breaks. You want to make sure you build in your whole schedule so that it accommodates you and, sustainably prepares you for this long day. Schedule a lunch, a walk, whatever it is that you have that you want to do. Don't let it interrupt the time block for a task, but rather schedule that task in its own time block.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. And so I've got two questions that come out of that. And one is, like, what do you use to do your scheduling? Is it in your Outlook calendar? Is it on paper? Like, what's your suggestion for doing that scheduling?
Well, I think in terms of a suggestion, I think every person needs to do what they're comfortable with and that they're able to stick with. You don't necessarily have to go with the latest, greatest app that's out there, because it's no good if you are, there's a learning curve involved and you don't feel comfortable doing it. I am old school. I use a paper and pen, and I just tear off a sheet and I start the next day. And I love the satisfaction of being able to cross off tasks that I've completed. There is, information out there that actually says we release endorphins when we do that, the physical act of crossing off. So I encourage my clients to go old school first, but if they've already got a calendar established, then sure, use your Outlook or Google Calendar to create your time block schedule. But the important thing is that you're using it.
Okay. And another idea that I had heard, you're talking about, you're competing against the clock in some ways. But I heard someone suggest that as you do this, you can actually create a competition against yourself. And let me give you the example. So, someone is doing sales, and they're going to send so many outbound emails. They say, all right, I'm going to block out this hour, and all I'm going to do is send outbound emails for that hour. Now, that you're competing against the clock, what you do is you track, okay, I sent out 15 emails during this hour this morning. Can I do 16 emails during that hour tomorrow morning? Can I do 17 the next day? And to create a competition with yourself as you are blocking out that time. What's your reaction to that concept?
Yeah, I think it's fun. If you procrastinate on doing emails, making it fun and interesting for you is certainly a technique that you can use. My only caution is that you want to make sure that the quality of work you're putting out there is not inhibiting, the time piece and the competition piece. So there needs to be that balance. You want to make sure that the task is up to the order of working against the clock for fun, but doesn't diminish the quality.
A very well thought out concept. So number 4 is get organized. So
Mm-hmm.
talk to me about the idea of getting organized.
Sure. So I was a hands-on professional organizer for 10 years, and I got to see the value of what organization can bring to, somebody that's working from home or somebody that's just managing the home. And it's transformational. And when you do get organized when it comes to work, it can really make a difference in the productivity that you put out there. So that means a few things. A good rule of thumb, and this applies to anything, whether it's shoes, clothes, file folders. Okay, strive for less. Right, do what you can to reduce the amount of stuff that you have, the clutter that you have, because when you have less to maintain, less to clean, less to search for, and it can make a big difference. So that may mean, doing a regular edit, or you may have heard the term purge of your items, whatever the category may be, files, items on your desk, people in your Facebook life, whatever that may be, to, elevate, who you are, the life and work that you want to lead. Think about editing and striving for less. If one of the things that I also like to recommend is what's called the 1 in, 1 out rule. Okay. So when you bring something in from a category, whether it's a book or a hat, can you release something from that same category? And you can do the same with, anything that's in your office space, 1 in, 1 out. And then sorry, go ahead.
No, my brother-in-law is a huge believer in the 1 in, 1 out, especially when it comes to clothing items in the house. He says, like, anytime that someone buys me a shirt, I have to take one of the shirts that I have that is old and it's got to go. I don't need nobody. It's not he who dies with the most shirts wins, right? It's a matter of keeping yourself limited to what you actually need and what you can actually use, rather than being overwhelmed by it. So, yep, I love the idea.
Right. Yeah. And think about that 80-20 rule. That really applies to a lot of things, particularly our stuff. We use and wear 20% of what we have 80% of the time. And if you really unpack that, you'll be amazed at what you may see in your closet or in your file drawer. And when you let go of what's not being used or is no longer serving you, you're opening up the possibility for other things, getting dressed a little faster, filling your drawer with new clients, moving the old clients elsewhere. So that 80-20 rule is a good one to follow as well.
Excellent.
When it comes to organizing, the other two pieces I want to share is that you need to create a home for everything. It's very important that, if you're going to organize areas in your life, you need to make sure that you've got a bin, a box, a file to hold what you are organizing. And then lastly, maintain what you have regularly. So if you take it out, put it back. If you put it on, put it away. So maintain on a regular basis, and then you'll never have to organize again when you follow some of those rules.
Got it. Okay. Finding a home for everything. I'm just glad that for those of you watching on YouTube, you cannot see my actual desktop because there is a home for everything, and it's one home, and it's all laying on top of each other. But I digress. All right, we are almost out of time, but tip number 5 is sleep deeply. Can you expand on that a little bit?
Sure. Yeah, I think that we miss the mark when it comes to our sleep. I feel like we just do it because it's how the day ends. When in fact, that is really how a productive day begins, by setting ourselves up for a good night's sleep. And what that means is that you can put some systems in place in order to make that happen. So develop, much like we do with our kids, a sleep routine. Get your jammies on. Dim the lights. Disconnect from any screen activity 60 minutes before you get into bed. Take a look at your environment that you're sleeping in. Researchers say that 65 degrees is the best temperature to sleep in. Check your bed, your pillow. Are they comfortable? Do you wake up with neck pain or back pain? And what you can do to change that. Implements such as eye pillows and a sound machine and a weighted blanket might help you sleep more deeply. And then also consider beverages that you're drinking throughout the day. For some people, that third or fourth cup of coffee after lunch might be just the reason why you're still up at night. So you might want to think about what you're drinking throughout the day and when's a good time to stop drinking any liquids so that you can sleep through the night instead of using the restroom, waking yourself up. So those are all essential steps that you can take to setting yourself up for a good night's sleep so that you are more productive the next day.
Okay. Interesting to hear you say that. One of the things that I think is a question for me is your smartphone. Okay. A lot of times we use a smartphone as an alarm clock, but that means that it's sitting beside the bed, and usually it's sitting with the screen side up. And so you're hearing it buzz, you're seeing the lights, and that even though you may be asleep, your brain is taking that in. What are your thoughts on, like, how do we protect ourselves from our smartphones during our sleep?
Yeah, so thanks for the lead in on that. So here's a bonus tip. Do not sleep with your smartphone next to your bed. Period. End of story. And you will regain, for many people, 2 hours in a day if you release having that phone next to you. And I'll tell you why. So first of all, the phone next to you provides ambient light throughout the evening. Even if you turn it off, it's making noises, it's giving off, some vibrations. And there's always that temptation to just pick it up, and particularly in the middle of the night or right before you're falling asleep. Rather than read a book, we usually start scrolling through Facebook. And all of that impacts our sleep, and we lose time when we do that. We should be getting to sleep instead of staying awake because of our phone. And when we start our day, if we use our phone as an alarm clock, the impulse might be to check email because you've got a little circle there that has 14 messages, or to check notifications on Facebook, etc. And then suddenly the time you were going to spend maybe working out or journaling, devotional, has now been lost in, I'm only going to do this for a few minutes. And then suddenly 45 minutes later, we've lost our morning to our phones. So I suggest using a traditional alarm clock and make sure that its light is very dim, because again, the ambient light can make the difference between sleeping hard and deeply as opposed to not. And then charge your phone elsewhere. Don't put it near your bed.
Got it. All right. Hey, Sandra, thank you so much for sharing. We got a bonus tip in there as well. If people want to learn more about your organization, and there's my play on words, they want to learn more about your company and learn more about you, what's the best way to do that?
Yeah, they can. Everything is all on my website, organizationlane.com. Links to Facebook, LinkedIn. My blog is there. You can sign up for the blog. Free resources for your audience. If they're interested in some downloadable checklists, they're all in there.
Wonderful. I will definitely put a link to that, and possibly some of your social media stuff in there. They'll all be in the show notes so that people can find you easily. Sandra, thank you. It is now time for 3 questions to establish your humanity. Are you ready for this?
Okay, I'm ready.
All right. Well, you brought up sleep. So the question is, how many pillows do you sleep with at night?
I sleep with one, and it is a memory foam pillow that kind of has a curve from my neck. It took me a long time to figure out the right one. And then I like to sleep with one on my belly.
Okay.
It kind of adds a little bit of weight. So two
So you,
pillows.
you got two pillows. That works. Um, do you love or hate roller coasters?
Hate.
I, so,
Absolutely.
so tell me about what is it about roller coasters that you hate?
It's the height. Yeah, it's the height. I just can't do it. And you know what? I tried to enjoy it. I did. There were several roller coasters at Kennywood, for those of you that are not from Pittsburgh, that were doable for me, but I just did not have fun. And I thought to myself, why am I putting myself through this? So I have opted to be the person sitting at the exit holding the coats for everybody.
And when you put it that way, everybody really appreciates you're the stuff holder. So are there any rides in the amusement park that you will, like the carousel, or is there stuff that you will go on, or is it you just decide not to?
Yeah, I could probably do a carousel. I thought that a Ferris wheel was going to be pretty innocuous, but again, it was the height. It was traumatic experience. You'll have to have a conversation with my son because he and I went on that together, and it was it was interesting.
Yeah, I, my best friend, when who was a pilot, was scared of heights, and I remember we were like 6 years old. We went on a Ferris wheel, and he was absolutely terrified, like to the point of being on his knees, not able to look out at all. So yeah, you are.
That was me.
Yep.
Yep.
Okay, so you brought up earlier being a Jersey girl,
Mm-hmm.
and pizza. Okay, so I know this. I grew up in Philly, and the pizza that you get in Pittsburgh is not quite the same as what you would get, and there are a number of different reasons why. Have you been able to find a good pizza place here in Pittsburgh?
I've heard that there are some. I have not been able to enjoy it myself. I don't think it's close enough. I would have to go to it in order to get it. It's like in the city of Pittsburgh. So I'm gonna have to say no to
Okay.
that. I really haven't myself.
Well, then let me ask the question the other way around. When you
Okay.
go back to Jersey, where is it that you're going? Where is it that you're getting a pizza from? You say this is the quintessential New Jersey pizza.
So fortunately, it's not far from where I stay at my brother's house. It's called the Cedar Grill. And we not only get one the minute we arrive, but we make sure that we have one in the car when we're headed home.
All right, excellent. Is that North Jersey, South Jersey? Like where in New Jersey is
Yeah,
that?
it's in North Jersey,
Okay,
in Caldwell.
got it. So I will say that our family goes on vacation to Ocean City, New Jersey, and Mango and Mango Pizza is a staple in Ocean City, and you can't get the taste anywhere else. And eating it piping hot out of the oven and burning the roof of your mouth just adds to the experience, and it makes it, really what Boardwalk Pizza is all about. Sandra, thank you so much for being with me. You are indeed a smart person. For all of my listeners, I appreciate you. Make sure that you subscribe so you don't miss an episode, and I will remind you that when you stop learning, you stop living. Have a great day, everybody.